Water has no fixed shape, no stable color, and it never stays still. It cannot be measured, contained, or possessed.
When painters try to represent water, they are forced to accept a fundamental truth. Reality cannot be fully captured or controlled.
For painting, water has always been a problem. For centuries, it was a background, a setting, something that accompanied the scene but never led it. It was painted as a surface, as a horizontal line, as a polite reflection of the sky.
Painting does not freeze the world. It records a moment of perception, a brief encounter with something that is always changing.
No es mostrarnos la realidad tal y como es, sino tal y como la percibimos nosotros.
But water is not polite. It changes every second. It changes with light, with wind, with depth. It even changes when it seems still. To paint water is to accept something uncomfortable, that reality cannot be fixed. Joaquín Sorolla understood this very early. He looked for hours. He watched light enter the water, watched color dissolve, watched repetition disappear. And he understood that the studio was not enough. Walls froze what outside never stopped. The ceiling cut the light. Time seemed suspended. That is why he took his easel outdoors and painted in open air even when it was uncomfortable, impractical, unusual. Many of these observations took place here, on the coast of Valencia, on Malvarosa Beach. An open shoreline without irregularities, with pale sand and shallow water that reflects light upward. An everyday landscape, without apparent drama, which Sorolla turned into a constant workspace.
Sorolla pintaba mucho la Malvarrosa porque desde el punto de vista de la luz es una playa muy especial. De hecho, tenemos arena muy clara, agua poco profunda, y esto hace que la luz del sol rebote en la arena y en el agua y que esté toda la escena mucho más iluminada, ¿no? Y que además los límites entre el agua, los cuerpos y el espacio en general se vean mucho menos claros. Y es que esto, para un artista como Sorolla, ¿no?, que buscaba mostrarnos cómo vemos y no solo lo que vemos, la verdad que era muy importante.
To paint water meant standing in front of it, facing the sun, the wind, the sound of the sea, not as a spectator, but as someone who accepts a challenge. Water does not pose. It does not wait for the painter to be ready. It does not repeat itself. Every wave is different, every reflection unrepeatable, every second lost forever. Sorolla did not try to dominate water. He tried to understand it, to understand that water is not blue, that it can be green, violet, gray, or white, that sometimes it has no color and sometimes it has all of them. To understand that water does not reflect like a mirror, that it breaks forms, fragments light, dismantles reality. This was the starting point, before success, before recognition, before the market. A painter facing an impossible problem. And the decision not to look away. Looking at water requires time, attention, and a very specific kind of patience. Sorolla did not settle for seeing the sea. He studied it. He watched it for hours, waiting for the light to change, for color to transform, for the surface to stop being just a surface and reveal what was happening beneath.
Water is one of the most difficult elements to paint because it is never still. It has no fixed shape or stable color. Light, movement, depth, and time constantly transform its appearance.
Because water is not only what it reflects, it is also what it allows us to see. At the shoreline, the sea becomes transparent. Sand appears and disappears. The bottom merges with light. Nothing is fully above or fully below. That boundary, the frontier between air and water, becomes one of Sorolla's favorite territories. There, painting stops being description and becomes pure observation.
Definir con precisión sería traicionar la experiencia visual real. De hecho, esa falta de precisión es realmente pura percepción, porque es como lo percibe nuestro ojo.
Sorolla understood that the mistake was to look for a fixed color. Water cannot be painted with a formula. It must be painted by reacting to what happens in front of the eyes. That is why his paintings do not begin with a closed idea. They begin with looking, with being there, with accepting that painting must adapt to reality, not the other way around. Looking at water means accepting that it never repeats itself, that a reflection that just disappeared will not return, that light does not wait, that every instant is unique. Sorolla does not try to freeze that instant. He tries to catch it while it happens, and he knows that when the painting is finished, that moment will no longer exist. When a body enters water, it stops behaving the way we expect. Lines break, proportions shift, contours become unstable. The body no longer follows the laws of air.
In Children on the Beach, the visual fusion between bodies and water is not accidental. It reflects how human perception works under very specific conditions of light and transparency.
But the painting does not hold because of its story. It holds because of a problem you cannot unsee once you notice it. Where does the body end when water begins? Sorolla refuses to give us comforting outlines. Edges here are fragile, as if they didn't want to declare themselves. That fragility isn't decoration, it's a decision. Shallow water doesn't frame the body, it alters it. The leg's edge is no longer a line but a zone, a transition constantly negotiated between transparency, reflection, and subtle movement. Water transforms everything. It stretches legs, bends arms, dissolves edges. Skin stops having a single color and begins to mix with reflections, with the bottom, with light passing through the surface.
Shallow water acts as a living optical surface. Light passes through it, reflects off the pale sandy bottom, and returns transformed. As a result, the eye does not perceive stable borders, but soft transitions of color and brightness.
For academic painting, this was always a problem. The body was meant to be clear, readable, stable. But in water, none of that holds. And Sorolla does not try to correct it. He accepts it. It is not about anatomy, but about perception. About how we see when we look through a medium that alters everything.
Así pues, Sorolla no está pintando primero el cuerpo y luego el agua, sino que los hace coexistir en un mismo campo óptico, ya que pinta la realidad directamente deformada, que es como nosotros la percibimos.
The core of this painting is what Sorolla chooses not to hide, the area of doubt. In real life, when you look at a body in clear water, there's a moment when your eye cannot tell whether it's skin, reflection, shadow, sand, or a flash of light landing exactly there.
En el agua poco profunda, los contornos no existen tal como los conocemos en tierra firme. El agua distorsiona y suaviza la forma.
Sorolla paints that moment. He doesn't correct it. He turns it into the center. That's why the image isn't only bright. It's unstable. Even stillness vibrates. Water never holds color still. Blues turn greenish because of the bottom, shadows pick up violet, whites appear as reflections and vanish a second later. Sorolla treats water not as a flat plane, but as a living field of small decisions, where light breaks, gathers, dissolves. That is why his figures do not seek precision. They are not there to be measured. They are there to be felt. Water does not surround the body. It passes through it. In many of his paintings, the true protagonist is not the human figure, but the relationship between body and water, a constant dialogue between solid matter and liquid element, between form and dissolution. Children playing at the shoreline, people walking into the sea, bodies half submerged do not pose, they move, and that movement is essential. A body in water is never still. Even when it seems motionless, water continues to move around it. It keeps altering what we see. It keeps changing the image. Sorolla paints this intermediate state. Neither inside nor outside. Neither fully defined nor fully dissolved. That moment when the body stops being only a body and becomes part of the landscape.
En Children on the Beach, el agua se siente pasiva, como que envuelve a los personajes y forma parte de ellos.
Here, water stops being background. It becomes an agent. Something that acts, modifies, decides.
Sorolla paints what he actually sees, not what he knows intellectually. Inspired by Velázquez's naturalism, he seeks truth in appearance rather than any idea of form. Here, the body is not separate from its environment. It exists within water, light, and movement. The painting captures a perceptual experience, the moment when vision can no longer isolate form because everything is connected by light.
Sorolla does not idealize these bodies. He does not freeze them. He lets them exist within a changing system, where nothing is permanent and everything is in transition. Water does not wait, neither does light. Everything that happens at sea unfolds within a minimal margin of time. A reflection lasts only an instant. A shadow changes shape before it can be measured. A wave never repeats itself. To paint water is to paint against time. Sorolla understood this very early. He realized that he could not aspire to fix what he was seeing, that any attempt at absolute precision was doomed to fail. Water would always move faster than the brush. In The Horse's Bath, water changes role completely. It's no longer a delicate, transparent filter where forms softly dissolve. Here, water has weight. It pushes, it hits, it interrupts.
The key difference lies in the physical behavior of water. In Children on the Beach, water is calm, shallow, and luminous. It gently filters light and allows form to merge. In The Horse's Bath, water becomes active and forceful. It strikes the body, splashes, and breaks continuity.
The horse is not passively in water. It's in a collision. Sorolla paints the collision in a way that cannot be calmly described. No line resolves it. No stable form remains. The horse becomes a mass constantly rebuilt because water cuts it into fragments. Foam, splashes, ripples, broken reflections.
These shifts demands a different pictorial response. Sorolla adapts his technique accordingly. Broad, energetic brushstrokes dominate the sea, while sharper, crossed strokes define the horse and the child. Water is no longer a medium of fusion, but of impact. Sorolla allows the behavior of water itself to determine how the painting is constructed.
That is why his way of painting changes. The brushstroke becomes quick, flexible, open. The painting stops being a closed object and becomes a process. This is also a painting about speed, not clean, elegant speed, but messy speed happening too fast to be drawn. That's why the brushwork becomes more open, more urgent. Sorolla isn't polishing, he's recording. And here, recording means accepting that water forbids finish. Notice how foam acts like a blade. It isn't decorative white, it cuts mass. Where foam appears, the body separates from background, destabilizes, yet intensifies. Foam is light in motion. The instant water stops being surface and becomes event.
La espuma en este caso es la huella visible del movimiento, y es que al final Sorolla está tratando de captar un instante concreto, un momento exacto de la realidad, tanto basándose en la luz presente como en el movimiento del agua. Y para esto, la verdad que la espuma es un elemento muy importante, ya que le permite conseguir su objetivo de una manera más precisa.
Sorolla does not paint thinking about the final result. He paints by reacting, by responding to what happens in front of his eyes, by accepting that the painting must advance at the rhythm of reality. Time becomes a silent enemy. Every second that passes, light is no longer the same. Color shifts. Water reorganizes itself. Painting becomes a matter of deciding what to leave out. That is why Sorolla stains, overlaps, corrects. He leaves the trace of the process visible. The painting does not hide its construction. It does not pretend to be eternal. Like water, it is a provisional state. Speed is not carelessness, it is necessity. To paint slowly would be to lie, to pretend that the world stops when it does not.
By painting foam, Sorolla introduces time into the image. The horse's body is no longer perceived as a solid, stable form, but as something constantly interrupted by motion.
In Sorolla's painting, time is not frozen, it is sensed. It can be felt in the vibration of color, in the instability of forms, in the way nothing fully closes. He does not seek to describe every detail. He does not try to correct every deviation. He prefers to preserve the overall sensation, the visual impact, the first impression. To paint against time is to accept that a painting will never be definitive, that something will always be left out, that something will always be lost. But it is also to accept that this loss is precisely what gives life to painting.
The foam fragments the figure and forces the viewer to read the painting as a sequence of events rather than a frozen pose. Here, Sorolla is less interested in describing anatomy than in capturing energy, force, and the fleeting nature of the moment.
Sorolla does not defeat time, he dialogues with it. and in that dialogue, painting stops being representation and becomes presence. In many of Sorolla's paintings, the subject seems clear at first glance. There are boats, nets, sails, human figures, but a closer look reveals that none of these elements is truly central. What takes control is water. The subject is only an excuse, a starting point, a necessary element so that something more important can happen, painting itself. Sorolla understands that interest does not lie in what is represented, but in how it is represented, that an object without intrinsic importance can become a visual event when exposed to light, movement, and color. Walk on the beach is often read as an easy image. Two figures walking, soft wind, clean light. But that ease is deceptive. This is one of Sorolla's most demanding paintings because it removes almost all traditional tools of pictorial drama.
En esta obra, el mar no se muestra como algo independiente, separado del resto de la escena, sino que se funde con todo lo demás. De hecho, los colores del agua se funden con los de la arena, con los de las propias sombras de los personajes, y al final lo que estamos viendo es que este agua ya no es simplemente algo que se pinta, sino que pasa a definir cómo se ve todo en general.
When water enters the painting, it reorganizes everything. It determines the composition, it sets the rhythm, it conditions the painter's gesture. Nothing can remain rigid when water is present.
In this painting, Sorolla works with very highlight levels and almost no strong shadows. This creates a major technical challenge. Without contrast, the image can feel flat. But Sorolla avoids this by using extremely subtle differences in color temperature, brightness, and brushstroke.
There are no deep shadows to hide form, no strong contrast to guide the eye, no exaggerated gesture or narrative action. Everything is exposed under constant clarity, and that clarity is not decorative, it is a condition.
Small variations between warm and cool tones create volume and depth. Here, clarity is not simplicity. It requires precision, restraint, and complete control over color and light.
White sails are not sails. They are surfaces where light bounces, expands, and breaks apart. Boats are not boats. They are masses of color floating on an unstable structure. Human figures are not portraits. They are living stains within a moving system. Water does not accompany the scene. It governs it. That is why Sorolla does not seek stories. He does not construct complex narratives. He does not dramatize. What interests him is the balance between changing elements, the relationship between masses, colors, and reflections. The Mediterranean here acts as a machine of visibility. Water reflects light upward, sand throws it back, air disperses it. The result is a space where nothing can fully hide. Even the simplest volumes are dismantled by light.
In this work, water no longer appears as a visible subject. Instead, it defines the conditions of vision. Light reflected from the sea spreads across the entire scene. Sky, sand, figures, and air share the same luminous atmosphere. Water has become structural. It organizes space, color, and depth without being shown directly. Sorolla is no longer painting the sea. He's painting how the world looks under its influence.
In this painting, water no longer fragments, as in children on the beach, nor resists, as in the horse's bath. Here, water exposes. It turns perception into something continuous, without drama, but without rest. The eye cannot relax because there are no dead zones. This is a decisive moment. When the subject stops being the protagonist, painting becomes free. It no longer needs to justify itself by telling a story. It can exist for what it is. Water allows this release, because water does not tell stories. It does not represent ideas. It is pure presence, constant movement, a living surface.
Aunque parezca una obra muy sencilla, es técnicamente muy complicada, porque todo aparece a plena luz. Y esto obliga a Sorolla a mantener un control total y absoluto de los tonos y del color. Cualquier error se magnifica. Por tanto, la dificultad aquí radica en mantener esa profundidad, ese movimiento, ese volumen, ¿no?, de las obras de Sorolla sin recurrir al claroscuro ni al efecto dramático. Es prácticamente una pintura de equilibrio extremo.
Sorolla moves ahead of his time. Without abandoning reality, without breaking with figuration, he pushes painting toward a territory where subject matter is no longer an obligation. What remains is the gaze, the gesture, color in motion.
In Girls on the Beach, Sorolla represents sea as a vibrant, living surface. The water is not flat or uniform. It is built through short, parallel, and sometimes crossed brushstrokes that suggest constant movement. To capture the reflection of sunlight on moving water and wet bodies, Sorolla uses quick, broken strokes and pure white highlights. Color is carefully chosen to create vibration rather than description. The sea becomes an organism in motion, and the painting captures the exact instant when light, water, and life coincide.
As his painting evolves, something begins to change. Water is no longer just an element being represented. It becomes a way of thinking about painting itself. Color gains autonomy, forms simplify. Subject matter loses weight. Gradually, painting begins to speak about itself. Sorolla never abandons reality. He does not move away from the sea, the beach, or the human body, but he pushes all of it to a point where what matters is no longer what is seen, but how it is seen. In sewing the sail, everything seems to slow down. There is no visible movement of water, no bodies entering or leaving the sea, no collision or resistance. And yet, this is one of Sorolla's most radical paintings, because here water stops being an image and becomes a condition.
Sewing the sail looks calm, but is technically very complex. The main challenge is the white sail. White is never just white. It reflects light, absorbs surrounding colors, and changes depending on the atmosphere.
The sail occupies almost the entire visual field, a broad white surface that appears simple at first, but the longer you look, the clearer it becomes that this white is not visual rest. It is a problem, a space where light, air, and water intersect without ever fully stabilizing.
The sail becomes a surface where sea light, skylight, and humid air all interact. Sorolla uses color shadows as a technique learned from Impressionism to give the sail volume without darkening it. The calm we perceive is the result of careful control. Nothing is accidental. The painting appears simple because every problem has been perfectly resolved.
Here, the canvas stops being a window onto a scene and becomes an active surface, a place where color organizes itself, confronts itself, finds balance. Shadows are no longer dark. They are blue, violet, green. Reflections do not describe objects. They build relationships. Water connects warm and cool zones, unites sky and land, integrates the body into the landscape.
El agua actúa sin estar presente de manera visible, ya que la encontramos en la propia atmósfera de la obra. De hecho, esa atmósfera está llena de humedad, y eso es lo que hace un poco que se termine matizando la luz, que se terminen suavizando las formas, los límites, las propias sombras de los personajes incluso, y al final lo que vemos es que el agua, sin estar presente de una manera clara y directa, está actuando directamente, eso sí, en el efecto que nosotros percibimos de la obra.
For centuries, white served in painting as a place of rest. Here, the opposite happens. White demands attention. It resists quick reading. Every area of the canvas holds subtle variations that only appear when the viewer stays long enough. This painting shows that for Sorolla, painting water is not about waves or foam. It is about effects, about how water modifies light, destabilizes what seemed solid, prevents color from ever being just color. Without proposing it as theory, Sorolla approaches a modern idea of painting, that subject matter can disappear without the painting losing strength, that color and light can sustain visual experience on their own. Water is his ally in this process. It offers a territory where constant change justifies formal freedom, where instability is not a flaw, but a condition.
These paintings clearly show an evolution.
De hecho, si cogemos estas obras en su conjunto, vamos a ver cómo cada vez Sorolla trata el agua de una manera más profunda. Primero que todo, la trata como algo visible, algo que deforma las figuras, que confunde nuestro ojo incluso. Luego, la trata como movimiento, ¿no? Usando además la espuma para transmitirnos esta sensación de violencia. Después, la trata como algo que deforma la propia luz, actuando desde la atmósfera. Y por último, la trata como algo que define propiamente el espacio.
In these paintings, the goal is no longer to represent something external. It is to generate an experience, something that happens in the viewer's eye while looking. Sorolla does not paint ideas. He paints sensations, and in doing so, his work connects with a modern understanding of art, not as narrative, but as presence.
Sorolla becomes more interested in painting itself than in the object represented. Water turns into a pictorial language, a way to explore light, time, movement, and perception.
Y es que, en síntesis, lo que vemos es que el agua pasa de ser un elemento a convertirse en el lenguaje pictórico de Sorolla.
After spending time with these paintings, something shifts. Water stops being a subject. Light stops being an effect. Even the painter's name begins to recede. What remains is a form of attention. Water continues to move. Light keeps shifting. Nothing we have seen has stopped. And yet, something endures. What endures is the awareness that looking is not a quick act, that seeing takes time, that some things only appear when we stop demanding stable form. Sorolla offers no certainties. He offers situations of looking, moments in which the world loses clear edges and forces perception to adjust. Perhaps that is why these paintings do not exhaust themselves, not because they hide meanings, but because they recreate an experience that continues every time someone pauses in front of them.